A study of bug patches of ext4 and Cpre563x. The paper, a study of Linux file system evolution, provides a comprehensive study of file system code evolution. The authors' team analyzed 8 years of 6 representative Linux file system changes across 5,079 patches. The results are very useful for both the development of file systems themselves as well as the improvement of bug-finding tools. However, their study stops at Linux 2.6.39 on May 2011, almost 10 years ago. There are another new 5,000 patches that come out after their study. To answer the question, what's going on to the Linux file system now? The goal of this paper is to do a smaller analysis of current Linux file system patches to see if their conclusions and prediction is still up to date, and to find something new that can help file system developers to increase the robustness of Linux file system nowadays. Due to the time and human resource limitation, I cannot go through all 5,000 Linux patches over 5 Linux file systems. So this project collected and analyzed 200 bug patches from ext4 and Cpre563x. The reason I choose those 2 out of 6 file systems is their diversity. ext4 was stable and in production use before the Linux 2.6 kernel. I believe it becomes more stable and reliable over years of development. But Cpre563x was added into Linux 2.6.29 and was still under active development at that time. The patches I collected and analyzed are the 100 latest bug patches of each file system. By analyzing and comparing recent patches of these 2 different types of Linux file systems, I can come out with a better study and result of Linux file system development nowadays. In this paper, I will first talk about the limitations of my study, then I will demonstrate the methodology I used to collect and analyze bug patches. Finally, I will show the result I get, my findings, and my suggestions to Linux file system developers. Before we are digging into this project, it's important to know that there are few limitations of my study. The first one is the scale of the dataset. In this project, I totally choose 200 bug patches from ext4 and Cpre563x, 100 from each. Due to the limitation of human resource, it takes me tens of hours to collect, analyze, and sort all these patches. The reason why I spend such a long time analyzing these bugs is that as my work continues, I continue to learn new knowledge about bug types and bug consequences. At the same time, I often find that my previous analysis is wrong, so I have to go back again and again to revise the result I got before. Although this may seem like a large amount of work, this dataset of 200 bug patches have many disadvantages such as disk scale and duration scale compared to the previous work done by P01. The problem comes out that I do not have enough background knowledge on Linux file systems. That is, when the code appears to be a little bit complex, then I will have trouble understanding it. In this case, my analysis of the bug patch is completely dependent on the title and description provided by the author. Sometimes it's sufficient to analyze a bug just by reading through its title and description. An example is shown in the left picture. From the title, I can easily determine that the bug type is error code. And as mentioned in the bug description, an error return code is missing, so we can determine the bug consequence as error since an unaccepted error code is returned. This patch log is relatively easy to understand and does not require me to understand the code. However, bug patches are committed by different contributors. Some of them provided detailed descriptions, some of them do not. As a result, I may encounter difficulties in analyzing patches of bugs uploaded by the latter. An example is shown in the left picture. The contributor of this patch only wrote a one-line description that we seem to have more driver bugs than thought. From this word, the only thing I can understand is that this patch is a bug patch, not a performance patch. And it may affect drivers, but I have no idea what type of bug it is and what kind of consequence it may cause. Due to the lack of background knowledge of file system and sometimes not detailed patch description, I have to skip some patches, although I know they are bug patches. This can slightly affect the component of my dataset and can lead to an unrepresentative overall result. Our source of data is a Git tree of ext4 and Cpre563x. All patches include bug patches, performance patches, reliability patches, feature patches, and maintenance patches can be found on this website. There are a few steps to collect, analyze, and sort bug patches. The first step is to search keywords such as bug and fix using the built-in search engine to quickly get all possible bug patches. Then choose 100 latest patches for each file system. The second step is to carefully read patch descriptions to double-check if this patch is a bug patch or not, and to get more information about this bug patch, such as bug patch and bug consequence. The third step is to use the information obtained from the description in the previous step, along with code changes shown in the patch to obtain the specific properties of bug patch. An example can be found is shown in the right picture. I've put all information of the 200 bug patches, including patch title, bug type, bug consequence, bug subtype, and patch link, into the Excel spreadsheet as a dataset, so as to facilitate sorting, analyzing, and generating charts. The left figure is a screenshot of a portion of the dataset. The picture in the right shows the proportions of the various bug types in the two file systems and how they compare to each other. As we can see from both file systems, semantic bug dominates other bugs. Congruency bug takes the second place, then error code bugs, and finally memory bug. This result is pretty similar to the statistical result done by P01. There is only a slight difference that in the previous work, both ext4 and Cpre563x have nearly the same percentage of error code bug and memory bugs. However, in my study, Cpre563x has a large percentage of memory bug and ext4 has more error code bugs than memory bugs. My conclusion is that These are fluctuations in the data due to the small dataset, but the overall result is very similar to the previous work, suggesting that the bug type structure has not changed significantly over the past decade. I further cataloged and counted the bugs of both file systems according to the bug consequence. The visual result can be found in Figure 4.3 and Figure 4.4 below. From those two figures, I found that the most common type consequence pair is semantic bug causing wrong. The second common pair is congruency bug causing deadlock. The third common pair is semantic bug causing corruption. In addition, semantic bug causing error and memory bug causing leak are also common in my dataset. Other bug consequence pairs are uncommon than pair mentioned above. Those pictures are screenshots of common type bugs. But for this presentation, I'm not going to talk about them one by one in detail. If you are interested in those examples, you can check the details of them in my paper report. This study is a statistic and analysis of today's Linux file system bug patches 10 years later after the previous paper is published. Comparing with the study done by P01, the basic composition of bug patches remains. The semantic bug is still the most dominant bug, which accounts for more than 50% of all bugs. Congruency bug takes the second place. Memory bugs and error bug, code bugs are still not very common among all bug patches. This means that the analysis and conclusions of bug patches from previous paper have not changed in these years. An interesting finding is shown in the picture in the right. Those two different bug patches separated by many years are extremely similar to each other, which means that some kinds of bugs cannot be prevented with the increased maturity of file system and the improvement of the technology. Although the main structure and trend of bug patches do not have significant changes, I get a few new findings that are interesting and should not be ignored. The first finding is that a large proportion of bug patches fix the bug from other patches. The findings suggest that the file system itself is relatively stable. Most of the bugs come from new patches which have not been extensively tested. It's worth mentioning that there is a bug patch fix this system crash simply by calling back changes made by another patch. To conclude, as the file system becomes more stable today, the major bugs are from other patches. Therefore, in order to avoid crashes and file system corruptions, developers should be more cautious before releasing their patches and try to avoid bugs caused by new patches through more comprehensive testing as far as possible. As file system administrator, before making new patch permanent, you should allow sufficient time so that others can find out the potential bugs and avoid the loss caused by file system corruption and crash. The second finding is that the criteria proposed by P01 may need to be renewed. Previous paper proposed a criteria which include 4 different kinds of bug type, which are semantic, congruency, memory, and error code, and 7 different kinds of bug consequences, such as corruption, crash, error, deadlock, hung, and leak. If a bug's consequence does not belong to any of those 6 types, it will go into a general bug type, which is wrong, which is called wrong. My study finds that different from the previous paper, the bug with wrong consequence is significantly higher. An example is shown in the previous example. The bug causing overflow is defined as wrong consequence bug with the old criteria, and there are many other similar bugs that can also cause overflow. So it's worth to renew old criteria to deal with the new kinds of bugs that are emerging today. Finally, as a suggestion to the patch contributor, a clean patch description with the cause and consequence of the bug is really good for readers. Many contributors write pretty good notes. However, there are still some patch descriptions that seems very abstract and difficult to understand. And thanks for watching.